because if we can all do stuff cheaper and be able to make more money in that route, it works for everybody. And that's kind of one thing that's helped us keep also our prices lower than grocery stores. But my issue out there is the convenience of people coming in to buy stuff, like, because they all believe that all we're doing is selling quarter halves, wholes, or whatever it is. But I sell retail stuff out of a front freezer that we have, a display freezer, and that's off of anything we process. So if I get a beef or a hog or a lamb, I can sell it through there as long as we processed it. I mean, you can do pass-through items from a federal facility, but typically you'll end up, if you do that, you price them a little higher because it already went through somebody. And it sometimes that does have to happen just because there's not enough supply locally and we're only so big. So like my inside cooler, after we kill, can hang about 35 animals. My outside cooler is roughly 12 to 14 beef. We only put stuff that is actually have to cover the stuff that is gonna be I guess retail exempt. But anything like, say, if your cow died and you brought it, you skinned it, gut it, got your brand inspection and brought it to us to at least do the burger, to save the burger for you. That's something that you would have to do, not for sale, custom, not for sale. So you can't sell it to anybody. You could give it away all you wanted, but you couldn't sell it to anybody. But like for like the daycare, if you came through us we bought an animal and you paid that price through us for it and everything, the process, you could actually serve it to your kids because your main, uh, the way you earn is not by the food that you're feeding them, but by the service of taking care of them. So that's kind of a loophole there. What we don't have to, for in state, in Wyoming, we don't have to necessarily retail inspect that all the way through because you're not reselling it in any type of way. You're providing it as part of your service as a meal for those kids. And usually, most of the time when that happens, usually around fair time, because most daycares will buy some fair animals, and that's what they want to use for their kids and everything like that. But I think the trick for us, I believe, is going to be finding the right price range to stick within and making sure there is enough animals throughout the year. Because right now our slow times are probably March, June, maybe parts of May, and then we're full usually the rest of the time, especially during the holiday seasons. And then my August and part of my September, last week of July is all dedicated to nothing but the fair. So there's nobody has to call and get an appointment to get their animal scheduled because they're taking a Park County Fair. They're going to buy an animal from one of the kids at Park County Fair, beef, hog, and lamb, because they're Joe Bridges. He's the one that all you got to do is once you win the bid, everybody knows all you got to do is say our name automatically on the list. All Park County gets done in between that last week of July and whatever it is in August that those finish up. Then I do Bighorn counties, whatever they have lined up for us, and then the rest goes to Fremont County. Usually we get 3 different counties. And as far as the Hunger Initiative, we usually get 2 hogs of those. We can't necessarily do the snack sticks with them because the Department of Ag took that from us when we got the new license. The new regulation was you couldn't put a cooked product in with them where stuff was hanging, even though that had never been an issue for 30 years because nobody ever got sick. But with that regulation, the process for our snack sticks, Polish, and our summer sausage all got taken away because those have to get cooled right away. So, and that's our only cooler option is where everything else is already hanging. And there's no, according to them, there was no way around something not potentially flying airborne or whatever onto the snack sticks or summer sausage or whatever it is. So the only time we're able to do that is if we intentionally not kill a week, then 2 weeks later we can just cook as much jerkins as we want because we have nothing hanging. But I think a lot of our main stuff is when it comes to this part of trying to get it into the schools is going to be how much burgers the school is going to take, whether it be we just do it for one school, two schools, whatever, or if they're going to do it for the college too, or whatever the case is, about how much are they all going to use a week? Because I know some restaurants use like 80 pounds of burger a week. I know that schools are going to be on a different level of that. And if you, most of the time when you have say you have a 100-pound burger cow, it's probably already really skinny, has big bones. You're probably lucky if you get 300 pounds of burger off of it. Anywhere from 100 to 150, give or take a half. Um, uh, but on your good burger cows, you can get 300, 400, 500 pounds, especially the ones that weigh just over 1,000. They usually have really nice fat on them. So, and you trim them down according to what people want. And a lot of our burgers, roughly 90-10 to 85-15. And even if we're selling burger too, we still sell at the same price, unless the only time I really ever give a discount is if you're buying a whole bunch from us, like 100 pounds or more or something. Like right now, my burger, I believe, is $5.25 a pound. In during COVID, I think we were exactly at 3, give or take, 275 maybe. But then even when we were selling beef, when I was buying it from a farmer and then selling it to my customer for the half, whole, whatever it was, I think we were at like $3 a pound, something like that. Was 275, $3, about the same. Because it was weird. It always seems like the burger was about the same price of what uh, I was buying beef from. Because if I buy it from one consistent farmer that has them throughout the times that I need them, then usually they agree with the price with you and everything. But if this is something that's going to have to go on like every week, every month, or whatever it is, then you have to make sure your farmers have enough supply. Not just one, multiple farmers, because everybody has their different times of year that they don't have anything ready. They're just getting a new round to get ready for that they're going to feed out and stuff like that. So I know a lot of our dead times is that March, June, July, and usually that's when they're also preparing for the fair, their kids' fairs and stuff like that. And um, so that's one of the things. And then just knowing, am I going to have to save a date for every single week or every 2 weeks? One thing I think that will be able to really help with it is once that kind of gets figured out for as far as getting the burger to the schools and stuff, is if it's a good cow or a good burger cow, or one that was lame or whatever the case is, then I'm going to say we bought it, we could easily take the primals, because we're almost there. Basically waiting on inspectors, city, state, and everything just to get going. Is since we bought Pepe's, we are doing that as a restaurant again. But I'm also going to put my freezer that I have out at the slaughterhouse there. So when you're sitting there eating local steak, pork, or whatever, the breakfast, whatever it is, the meat from there, we'll be able to say, oh, I got it from this farm. Be able to promote those farmers, local farmers, and everything like that, which would be something that would be nice to do, as long as there's that supply. Because as long as we have that supply, then we will be just fine. I won't have to worry about not promoting somebody 1 week or month or however long it takes to finish theirs. And it's nice because we can easily keep track of how much of that beef was sent to a restaurant or whatever it is from this specific farmer. It's not terribly hard to do, especially when you package it and everything. You can put the name right on it. It's usually how we do our packages anyways. So whether a farmer brings it, they sell it to half a beef to somebody, it's always going to say our name, and then it's going to say the person's name that's getting that half a beef, their weight, whatever, heifer, steer, cow, bull, whatever it was, and then the farmer's name right on the package every single time, down to the state that it was, down to the when it was cut up.
It's Jose. Junior.
You can.
I think that that's really great because it really solves one of the challenges of if you take out all your burger and you only have the prime cuts, how do you develop a market for the prime cuts? And you're proposing a solution for that. So that's amazing. Let's come back to that. And Savannah, why don't you talk a little bit about how you're engaging with the farm to school program and what opportunities you see?
Okay, so I'm Savannah Layland. I'm primarily new to my position as the food service director for Park County 1. Last year, we started off really great. WGE had a grant program where we could get local or Wyoming grown produce and supplies delivered to us every week. So we were able to get ground beef, oats grown here in Powell. Our kids were really excited for that because we got to tell them, you know, these were grown here, these were cooked here, and now they're being eaten here. They've never left. So the kids thought that was pretty neat. We were able to get onions, mushrooms grown in Shoshone, things like that. We filled our health bars full of Wyoming grown produce. You know, it slows down in the winter, of course, but mushrooms were pretty much available all year. The starting points I really see for, sorry guys, I'm really nervous, for the farm to school to be able to come in is mostly just communication, being able to reach out and, you know, find that network of people being able to find pricing easy, the bulk pricing, being able to put together, we're required to have specific contracts if we go over a certain threshold of, you know, like if we were to purchase ground beef from one specific supplier, we're required to have a procurement contract with that supplier. Because it would be well over our specific cost threshold.
That's great. Jen, what do you want to add to entry points and how you're in your new position?
Yes, so I think really an entry point is kind of like a sell sheet. So you bring me or any food service director what you have available in kind of your pricing and how frequently you expect that you can deliver it, or if it's expected we pick it up. You know, that kind of stuff is information that we really need to know. But in my role right now is we have a team nutrition grant, and as part of that we'll be building a database. So using Bobby's stuff, your USDA contacts, all that, the UW manual, and kind of narrowing that down so schools have kind of an at-glance guide to look at to reach out to who's got what. Now, if you're a producer looking for something that will set you above all others, it's going to be those value-added products. So the meat sticks and things you're talking about there. And you need to know that in order for school districts to use those value-added things, it's done in a licensed facility, right? We talked about that and the barriers there. But the other thing is with meat products, you have to have a formulation statement. So we can help you figure that out. But essentially what it is how much weight of meat goes into the product versus everything else you add, like your seasonings and things, and what that product is in the end. And we can figure out what it would credit as in our programs. So those who are willing to jump in and seek the value added items, that would be your cut produce, your meat sticks, your whatever, or even a value added item that wouldn't require so much drastic change, would be get a burger press, then make burger patties and meatballs and things like that, because schools use the heck out of those and not very many people want to press them themselves. So if you can get that done and figure out what size patty they can support in the nutrition side of it, whether it's a quarter pounder or something less, and go from there. And the meatballs, are they half ounce? Are they 1 ounce meatballs? You know, and allergies are a huge thing. So a lot of people are going all beef. We don't want wheat in our meatballs, right? Because we gotta deal with all the gluten-free kids. So we don't want that. We just want a meatball. So figuring out those value added things you can do with your product with underneath your umbrella and how you can help schools out.
Thanks. Yeah, so I heard you say there are 2 entry points, have a clear sales sheet where you can clearly identify what you can offer and then look for opportunities within the value added markets.
Definitely. That's my takeaway.
Thank you. Super clear. I think so I have a question for you guys. You know, you talked about different procurements and different amounts you can pay for, you know, an individual producer, or you get into aggregating and dollar amount issues. Is that something that's always happening at the school district level, or are individual schools procuring as well?
It's at the district, it's a district level because it's under the school food service account. So she talked about values. They didn't really line up with ours. I'm not sure where she got those, but anyways, for us, a small purchase is $25,000 or less. So if I buy $24,999 from you, I can just go for it. Because that would be the term of our contract, right? And then if I want to buy up to $50,000 from you, then I just have to call around. I got to call you and see what you'll sell it to me for. I got to call you and see what you'll sell it to me for. And then I say, okay, well, I liked you the best and here's why, right? Like you had these value added products that you could also give me. So I'm going with you. I did my due diligence. I called around. We call it 3 bids and a buy. That's what we call that level. And then any contract value, any one vendor that you're spending $50,000 or more with requires that formal procurement. And this, that's the compliance side of this. School districts get audited every 3 years, and we look at invoices. Invoicing is important because, like the daycares and things, like she's going to go out and try to buy melons or whatever. Well, we need to know how much melon she bought. So when we look at her menus, we can say, yep, you had enough melon for each kid to get that half cup that you claimed, right? So invoicing becomes important, especially produce side. Beef is pretty straightforward. It's by the pound, right? But yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. They're checked on every 3 years. So they got to make sure they're doing it right.
So sorry to pick on you school guys, but it's going to come back to processors and other things. But you know, you made it very clear, unless you have the certifications as a producer to do the value added cutting, processing, vegetables, whatever, that's happening by labor in your kitchens.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that? Like, do you have capacity for some kind of, you know, processing vegetables and then freezing them and then you pull those out later? Or are you, any raw product that comes into you is getting cooked that day and served that day?
For our district, we're, you know, I mean, we have 2 people in a kitchen. There's just not enough people to cook and, you know, process ahead of time. We did process, so we got some Yukon Golds out of Grable this fall. We served baked potatoes, but we had a lot left over. So I came in on a day off and processed them all so that we could serve them for breakfast. So we do breakfast potatoes, but we really don't have the labor or mass.
Chris does a little bit with his vegetable stuff. He's gone now, but he put up quite a bit of that himself because they are licensed kitchens, so they can put up their own stuff. But for the most part, school kitchens lack the infrastructure of like blast chillers and things like that to actually make that process work.
would that be a need for school districts on like the grant side?
If you have labor to accompany it, I mean, that's a problem nationwide, right? Like, where are all these people? Why aren't they working? So it's still, the equipment is a barrier, but labor is also right next to it.
Wasn't there a grant opportunity that's, I think there's an area that talks about it, if you could buy.
Yeah.
For doing this, okay.
Uh-huh.
But then you have to each, like, the space, and then you have to have the person that you're contracting yearly to do the things. So it's so I guess my question would be, what would be your suggestion for someone like me, sitting in economic development? It's my whole job to bring people who want to do this value-added pieces of the puzzle to the table so that the farmers don't have to do it themselves and the school district doesn't have to do it themselves. I think where we sometimes fall short is the amount, like, so when we're recruiting someone to come in, it's oftentimes a space issue. There's not enough actual buildings in the city of Powell to do much of anything. It's also a communication issue. They want kind of like guaranteed contracts or semi-guaranteed contracts. They'll be, generally businesses will be more lenient than producers when it comes to guarantees. They know that it's a business and they have to figure things out. But having those talking points, and I've even tossed around the idea of doing like a popular radio show and saying, these are the things that we need in agriculture. Who's interested in starting these businesses? Who's interested in coming into town and filling these gaps? Because a lot of it is transportation related, it's value add related, and then it's transportation related, right? To get it to where it needs to be. And economic developers in the past, like in Montana, they will do incubator kitchens to just fill the gap to get enough momentum to recruit the people to come into town, right? So I think what I'm hearing is like some people are like, well, the farmers need to do this. Well, the farmers are just never going to do that. Like they're just never going to put a commercial kitchen in and then buy all that equipment and then make a value add product unless they have a relative or something like that who was willing to start a brand new business, and maybe that would be a way that would happen. And I totally understand from the school perspective. So what would be your suggestion in tackling this? What would be like the next steps? Is it going to legislators and lobbying? Is it, like, where have you seen this kind of thing work, where it actually, the pieces of the food puzzle can come together?
That's a good question.
I think part of it, if I may answer, part of it, and Savannah can correct me, but it's a wage scale for those workers. And they can go to other places and make more money and get benefits or something, so that adds a lot into it. When you come into food service workers, they have a big turnover. They may get somebody and just get them trained and then they quit them, so that I've seen that happen so much throughout the state. It's mind-boggling. And so it becomes an issue if they don't have staff, they can't process. So
I think one pathway, and I'm kind of working on this for my own reasons that Bobby's talking about over there, is that the CTE program and starting there, because not all of their kitchens are certified kitchens, but some are, and working with that and kind of, so they're called pathways, right? Sure. So they have to take 3 classes in a pathway to graduate from that CTE program. And it's kind of like a race. Like if they're in egg classes and they're in culinary classes, like, oh, I hope they're with me next semester so I can claim them because I want the money for my program, right? So if you somehow, and there's like 0 budget for food in those culinary classes, like it's not much. It is not much. You're expected to cook every day is what the perception is, and you get maybe $3,000 for the school year. Like, yeah, it's not much. So these teachers, like typically you're focused on eggs, right? And now it's not eggs anymore. So it's, what are you going to do to get these kids the skills? So teaching them more about institutional food service versus hospitality. I think that is a big entry point because those programs are all throughout the state. And if they're taking food from local farmers that the food service director is buying and they're processing it to a point where they can use it or even helping get it all the way to the plate, like they're already there, they're already doing it. Why not?
That's a good idea. Can those kids go off campus for their classes to be like the workforce for like a business?
I believe so, because one of the things at the end is an internship. It's like an internship, but they call it something else. Yeah, it's like work experience type thing. So that can be the capstone of the 3 courses in a row. So those kids get the basic skills and then they add on them, and then the capstone is the work study type thing. And yeah, absolutely. Career Tech Ed.
Yep. So not like the foods class in
Uh-huh.
our high school.
Yep, and welding and all those
Really
classes.
explains why I asked my friend in high school, foods class. She's like, we only cooked one thing all semester. Really? Yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me now.
Oh, wow.
So she went to learn how to cook, but she's barely cooking at all.
Yep. So that is another one of those team nutrition things. We identified that we have a really, really big hole that we aren't raising directors, right? And so it's like, who's going to replace the workforce? So let's get this pathway built for these kids. Let's have some introductory grants so they kind of get a feel for how this will all work. And then let's put this into place. So it's helping everybody. I don't understand why it wouldn't be a win.
What would happen if we did, looked at the community garden thing?
Mhm.
They could grow food, or another club could grow food at HA, or,
Yeah.
and then that food could be used in this kitchen,
Mhm.
and the money for whatever, the $3,000 they're using to start growing the food
Mhm.
in the garden so that they have food to use. I don't know.
Yeah, and we see that around the state. I'm thinking of Guernsey. One of their SPED programs is a greenhouse. And that's their deal, is they tend to that greenhouse. In Alaska at the middle school, was it 5th grader? I don't know. One of the grades did all the composting, and for everything that came out of the school cafeteria was composted. And then they tended a garden all summer. It landed on the watershed council up there is who tended it in the summer, but I could see the vistas or something like that tending it in the summer. And then they would come back in the fall and harvest it, and it went back into the school. So it's like Chris said earlier, it's the drive. You got to find those districts that are willing to do the innovation and tie it all
It's
together.
unbelievable how many schools out there have greenhouses and they're not used. They're a storage facility.
There's great greenhouses in Casper at several of the elementary schools that are feeding into the food services. So it's something to look at there. And I know that Westside Elementary has the PE teacher at Westside Elementary is thinking about a greenhouse. So it's something people here are interested in too. And I had just one point of clarification from hearing you guys talk about at different times of the year, there's different price points, and like they're locking contracts now.
Yep.
And then at some point that food runs out and you don't have it anymore. So you have to fill in with local producers.
So there's many ways a school district can spend their money, but one of them is the USDA value they get. So that's things that they're locking in over the next month. So they're committing to, like Chris said, mostly proteins and canned fruit. There is another part of that, which is called DOD Fresh. If we ever got a huge produce producer, we could pursue getting them into that program. But that program it's run by the Department of Defense, obviously, but it just sells US grown produce to schools and defense contractors or whatever. So schools can put some of their money, they can either buy these brown boxes of this stuff, they can buy this produce, or they can take their brown box stuff over here and send it to, they can take their brown box cheese right here and send it to Land O'Lakes and they'll make a mac and cheese or something like that. Okay, so they have 3 ways that they can use that money they earn from the meals they served the year before. And then they have their food service budget because that is like a fraction. Do you know what you get? Like 30,000 or something maybe? I don't know. It's like it's a fraction. So I guess your food budget is around $500,000 or more. And it's like $30,000 of that. So then what they do is the school districts can join co-ops and childcare centers. So she mentioned the CNC co-op. That's the one up in this part. There's others in the southern part of the state. And what they do is they look at their menus and they say, okay, we need chicken nuggets, we need string cheese, we need juice boxes, we need applesauce cups, we need blah, 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 right? And so they put out that big formal procurement document and the broadline distributors bid on them. So Cisco and US Foods and Nicholas Foods, there's some others, right? So they bid on them, and then that contract is locked in, and what it primarily is price plus. So it'll be, right? So like part of it is item, like each item, they say, we'll sell you this for this much for this contract term. And then they can go at the end of each year and ask for adjustments or whatever, and then they drop them.
There are a few different, some are price plus and then some are fluctuating market value.
Yeah. So that's what they do. And then they can supplement with local foods, right?
Go back to the labor thing we were talking about, like with using the kids in the program, tapping into parents at the elementary school. Again, it depends on your community, your climate, your, all of that kind of stuff. But I know the elementary school, because I volunteered and did it last school year with the fresh fruits and veggies that they do as like a additional snack. They have parents and we come in and we're the ones that do all the front work of preparing all that thing and giving it out of the classroom bucket, so that way the kitchen staff didn't have to take on that additional work. And so if we're getting a lot of fresh produce that now has to be processed, also being able to reach out. And
Yeah.
do
Another thing I did along those lines, yeah, when I was in Cody, I saw that the labor was a big issue, so I approached Albertsons, and because they had a fresh cut produce department, and I said, hey, can you cut my produce for me? And they said, yep. So that was one way that I took care of it in Cody, is using resources that were already there. But I don't know if they do that here or not. I wasn't here to ask. I wasn't gonna drive over here for cut produce.
Listening to your contracting process, are there times of the year or windows of opportunity where small, like it would make sense to contract with a local person, or not contract, big contract, but pay somebody $10,000 or so?
To come like process stuff?
No, just to give you product. Like, is there a window of opportunity where you're short on product where it makes sense for to reach out to your local community producers?
I don't think so, because the broad line always has something in stock, so there's never really a lull.
Okay,
Would you say there's a lull? No.
thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for Savannah.
Yeah, and then we'll come back to AJ.
You talked about how you got a grant last year and that's was sort of the impetus of the project. How did you then go find the growers?
So it was a WDE grant. It was provided by them and it was actually contracted through, is it Wyoming Eats? Wyoming Eats. So she would go around and drive all around, or, her company would drive around Wyoming and pick up various items and then deliver it around the state as she was going through.
You were already connected. You didn't have to do that work of like finding the people.
Yeah, the WDE kind of did that for us.
Is it, is the program adjustable within the school? Because a lot of what I'm hearing is, this is what we do, you have to fit into it. So now you're asking producers to bend and twist to get into the program, or a local program that is desired for the school. There should be some more consideration within the school districts and the different stakeholders that are interested in this, to find out how to make it simpler for the producers. Kind of on both sides, right? Just like the producers need to get on the USDA so they can sign up, need them to do that. But the producers, if you're not a producer, if you've never been one, go spend a week with one, especially when it snows like this, and ask them to spend 10 more minutes to do something else, right? So I'm just asking, can there be a discussion between the school system that wants this local program to learn how to make it work for the local producers? Because the other side of it too is, it's all going to come down to money as well. We want local food, but if a producer goes bankrupt because they didn't make enough, then you lost another producer in the nation. It has to work both ways. And so, I mean, this is a major problem nationwide. Our food system in general is crumbling. And so there has to be a lot of people coming together and redesigning what it looks like. We can't expect to move forward in a whole new system with stuff that's been operating one way for the last even 5 years. And since COVID, things have changed so much. We are down at less than 88,000 head beef cattle, 88 million beef cattle in the entire nation. Most people don't know that. We are net food importer as of last year. So if we're gonna make these work, they've got to be rethought and totally redesigned, because you got to meet them where they're at. Talking about value added products. During COVID, there was all this grant money to build new slaughterhouses because they realized we don't have enough. A lot of them have closed because they're, it was like, here's money to go build a slaughterhouse. But what was lacking was the education to the local consumers on how to buy local. It was still Albertsons, Walmart, and grocery store. Walmart gets 1 in 4 food dollars. So there's a lot that has to be changed. But if we're going to change at our local level, we got to redesign what that looks like. So I'm just curious, from the school side and the programs that you guys run, are they open to changing? Or like, no, this is how we do it, fit it in every.
So I can't speak for every district in Wyoming, but I can speak, we are very open to changing. Just this last year, through the CNC, we worked on adding, so we're required to purchase X amount through our supplier through Cisco. We have to order 80% through there. They just added a clause to include, to exclude locally grown produce, locally grown items. So it's kind of a long process. It's just finding those little things that we can to get started, I think.
And there are some things that are absolutely not flexible, like the USDA regulations for food, like we can't use any Food Freedom Act things. That's not flexible and it's not going to change. So hanging your hat on that won't work.
I get you get a lot of liability.
Exactly. So and there's flexibility in menu planning and things like that. A lot of people think that we write a menu and say you have to serve this, but it's not true. Like that's totally local level. There's just bigger overriding things they have to touch, like all the colors of the produce and meeting the nutrition specs, which is not difficult. Once you figure out how to play the game, it's not a big deal. And the license thing, I will definitely check into that more, because that seems like totally something that is a big barrier, right? Like you've never had to hold a license before. So now all of a sudden you're going to inspect me based on what license are you tying this to?
Yeah, you're going to open me up to all these extra regulations and eyeballs on my ranch.
Yeah.
For what?
For what?
No, thanks.
Exactly. Yeah, when I heard that.
One of the things I heard, like big systematic potential problem, right? The schools are contracting with USDA, who's setting prices at a national level and expecting local producers to compete at that price point. And that's like if USDA's purpose is to support agriculture in the United States and local, that eventually boils down to the local farms and ranches, then we need to go to the USDA food program in the schools and say, hey, we don't need to be competing with the price points here, right? There's a budget, we need to be mindful of budgetary constraints, and at the same time, like, why is USDA asking farmers to compete with prices they're setting for a major food supply?
That's another thing that's really goofy about schools is the school nutrition department is the only department in the entire school that is expected to break even. The money they bring in is the money they can spend. Okay? So the only time they get money from us as taxpayers, that general fund that you hear about, is when they overrun. And when you overrun, we all know it's not good. So you get chewed on quite a bit. So price point is very serious. And the other thing that is hard about school district, you're operating in your little silo, your little business here, but the school district every year approves, and they're needed, I'm not saying they're not, but they approve what you're going to pay your employees and things like that. So you're operating a business that you're told you're given fixed prices to.
So we're
So,
just setting
yeah.
these rules, just be to have somebody tell them, it ain't gonna work. I mean, that's just the reality.
You just have to get buy-in from the school board to say, we are going to support general fund going this way.
But I do see paths forward for success here.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you think about the price of processing a beef, right? And we know right now that there's a lot of money available through the USDA value added producer grants that pays for processing. So we could cover that cost and allow you guys to purchase local beef. That's, the processing is not being paid for by, that cost is not being absorbed by the farmer or passed on to you all.
Right.
That would really help, because like I said, the cost of that would be the count.
Who's paying that?
Not gonna say, but just the general public out there, they'll buy a 300-pound pig from me or a 1,500-pound steer. They get the meat, and they cut it up. Well, where's the rest of it? I bought 1,500 pounds here. Well, okay. How much of that you have to haul out,
Did you want all the guts and bones and everything back?
We've had plenty of people tell me, we'll save the guts and bones for you next time. No, it happens often.
So there's an educational process there too.
Yeah.
And I would think that there could be some cost savings at Rogers too, based on the packaging.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking earlier too, but yeah, cause usually especially for like schools, you're gonna, I don't know how much they go through a day, but I mean, one of our biggest packages of burgers, like 5 pounds. And then there's some even companies, or when they do their cookouts, they just want it all in a box and they'll take care of themselves from there, So like if like the schools already have their own, because then there's the whole thing is, if you're gonna do it for a school, I believe it has to be packaged and sealed before it goes. So I couldn't just put it in a vacuum seal, whole bunch of vacuum seals, and then you just take it and store it how you're gonna store it.
So
But
is there an opportunity to operate at bulk there for how you receive beef?
It usually comes like,
10-pound,
10 pound.
Metal chubs
20-pound chubs would be
for 20,
okay.
and then,
But
or patty.
Yeah.
No,
Because I have like on patty, that's what, because I have, if it's bulk or patty, if you patty, you're gonna charge them more to do a patty.
so usually, but that's because, it doesn't happen often.
I don't
So-
know, I mean, you guys, like Benny, do you do hamburgers or do you just want bulk beef, bulk hamburger?
we do both. So
Okay.
we do buy bulk ground beef, but then we also buy patties through our processed commodities.
It's you guys involved, and if you guys wanna buy some patty, they're gonna cost more than bulk beef. It's gonna
And the
come out of-
labor, probably,
Yeah.
but then they have to pay for the labor too, so.
But that value added producer grant can pay for the added production costs of putting it in patties.
Yeah, because then because if the patties, like for us, we do most patties by the end of the day, just because if for each tote that has 25 pounds for you, 25 pounds for you, whatever it is, then that's one person's I'm doing at a time. So I have to make sure these 2 baskets are just for your name and not mixing them with the next one. Because that's very important when we cut stuff up, because then nobody wants some of that stuff. And I've had people that think that they got somebody else's beef when they got their own, because the way we process this stuff, the way we label this stuff, especially if it's something that needs to be taken care of later. So like your side pork, we freeze side pork and then we cut them up and everyone still has their tag on. That way we know we're not messing anybody's up. But yeah, no, the bigger packages would probably be the easiest and cheapest. Our packaging is probably the only reason why right now that my costs have kind of gone up. So why I've had to raise prices a little bit is just because like we used to get wrapping paper, just your basic wrapping, 18-inch wrapping paper for $35. Now it's anywhere from 70 to 95 sometimes, just from me getting it. And that's not like Blair's buying that same thing and then reselling it in pieces to everybody else or whatever, because I know that's what they do for hunting season for most people. But it just over the last 2 years, maybe last 2 years is when those prices kind of had gone up.
So,
Now, the grant you keep talking about for the processing fees, is that something that the processors apply for to utilize, or is that something that we as school districts or centers apply for? Because we purchased this beef and are having it sent in to be.
value-added producer grant, so it needs to be a producer entity, but there are lots of different types of producer entities that could apply. And I would have to look at it again to know if it was something like a Grant Rogers could apply for as an aggregator of producers.
Right.
But then, so then I have a question about that. I mean, grants we're finding, like, even at the local government level, your organization levels, a lot of people don't have that grant experience.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you or producers would apply for something like that? Besides Alex, because I know she writes a lot of grants. But is that a gap? You know?
Yes,
And what's
because
the
it
turnaround?
takes a huge amount of work and a huge amount, like, just to figure out, it has to be, it's federal grant, has to be matched 1-to-1, right? That means in tracking in kind, tracking cash match.
Oh, it's 1-1.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, yeah, for an individual farm to take that on is a huge commitment.
With something like a training help, like a teaching, like.
It's like,
But then we're asking you to take time
Exactly.
to take a training
writing
to
a
do
grant
that.
is extremely complicated.
So that,
Yeah, no, it's something like having a grant writing assistance program for people wanting to build out a farm to school and you want to have letters of support from all of the people involved, including the local school district receiving me, including the processor saying like, we are committed to this project. We're going to see it happen. To me, like that sounds like an entry point, right? Where you can get the price of ground down and still put money back in producers' hands and get a healthier product into the schools. But I think it takes conversations like this happening on a regular basis to keep seeing those opportunities for collaboration, right? And so I am just so excited that's happening.
That would help because when I get that cow butcher, it's almost $2 a pound just from the process. But I had been lost.
Yeah.
So then get paid for it. That bring that price down where you guys are competitive, you see.
Yeah, our own thing is with, so over the past 5 years, I've looked at multiple grants and there's some that very first question I asked them, do I have to stick with being federal? You know, if they tell me yes, that we don't even mess with it because the whole time that Rogers has ever ran is dedicated to the customer. You know, we're not dedicated to hotels, restaurants, institutions, because we're also not that big to be able to be providing on that level for all. But like for a school district, you know, if you had the numbers roughly of monthly of what a school's gonna go through for a burger, then that's something that could easily be figured out if it would be worth it. Because if we're gonna be required to do a certain amount of our production to be, if it's a USDA grant, most of the federal grants, they prefer you to be, because I know majority of the ones that happen in Montana too, the, the facilities had to be federal. They don't want a state facility in there anymore. And that wasn't just from me here, it was from my inspector, a guy from Roberts saying that his place burnt down and he had opportunity to rebuild with the grant, but they wanted him to be federal. He didn't want to be. And that's kind of what, like, my dad won't do federal. He does not want to deal with it or anything, just because there's so many more steps that you have to do. So many more, like, it has to be at a certain temperature before it goes into the cooler. Once it's in the cooler, before it goes to the blast cooler, it has to be a certain temperature. And when I visited the USDA, so there are genuine meats in Riverton, they took you through each cooler on how they were doing. It was a huge facility.
I don't think the value added producer grant, even though it's USDA, I don't think it requires USDA inspection. So,
And as long as if it's state, that's cool, that's fine.
But I just had something to add about local grants. So like we've come across, I don't know if you guys are aware that the state of Wyoming is actually set up like a grants management office that it's connected to the state Wyoming budget office, and it's immensely, it's super valuable. So, I mean, I had federal grants experience before I came to PEP. But since they hired me, I mean, they hired me to run the American Harvest program, but it's a program, it's a small amount. But I haven't written a lot, but since like, I don't know, it started like 3 years ago with all the ARPA, the CARES Act, all the federal dollars that are out there, which, I mean, it's a big question mark, I realize. However, the state has already contracted with a national consulting firm to help with grants management. It is free. Anyone can access this. And we can get that information out as maybe a follow-up to this, but it doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, a government, small business, anybody has access to this consulting company that you would normally have to hire on your own. So as long as it's gonna last, like, you guys should use the heck out of it. Like, that's my advice. And they've got office hour sessions every month, and I know it's more time. But the thing is, they have this email help desk thing. You send your email, it's a turnaround, yes, it's like 2 to 3 weeks. However, they're serving the entire state. But it's a team of experts on grants who is able to weed through all of them for your projects or your needs. So I highly recommend that. And then there's also a funding summit that's coming up in Riverton in April. And I don't know if you guys know about it, but it's free. Anyone can sign up. It's the same consulting firm that is putting it on. A lot of it's geared towards local governments, nonprofits, but Rebecca and I went last year, and that's when we learned about all of the effort and money that the state of Wyoming is putting into this to help communities and individuals access these federal dollars. So until it's gone, we should use it because it's our money anyway,
It's funded to,
and they even have a pot of matching funds that's available for certain grants, which is amazing. So.
Just a thought for you guys, if you're not already looking into it, something we're exploring, connecting with dairies and their culls. So dairy, they stop milking. Most of these guys that we've been talking to, they just send them on a truck to get rid of them. And I've been saying, hey, what if you just spun up a ground beef program direct to consumer, and they're just, oh, yeah.
I think we have one in the state.
What's that?
I think we have
Only
one dairy.
The one
it's in
down the
Park
road?
County.
oh, yeah, it's probably.
Yeah, and they were like George's Farm.
One down the road. And there's one in that, just
Some way.
some way.
I mean, I know about it, but,
I mean, is there another one here?
no, it's just like.
Pretty big. They supply metal gold, which is a huge co-op in Montana.
Yeah, so if they have enough, I don't know how big they are, but if they're a large operation, they're gonna roll through coals pretty regularly. And that could be a great source for cheap, and it's good beef. They've been on
And
dairy
they're-
rations their whole life.
And they're here?
Yeah,
Yeah, George's is right between here and Cody.
Okay.
Yeah.
nationwide,
They are
beef,
take the kids to-
26% of beef in the United States is dairy beef. Okay?
Yeah.
People don't, they go to the store, oh, that's gotta be Angus beef. No, it's, oh, no, Holstein cow.
Yeah. They're
I didn't know
not the best looking.
when hay prices got high, dairies moved south, get closer to the hay, cut freight costs down.
Makes sense.
And so we had,
We grow all the hay. Or lots of hay.
Oh, I know, but you got lots of dairies that were out,
Interesting.
so they,
So I hear
but
lots
we're
of
using them.
roles for everyone here. We've come to the end of our time today, but it sounds like there's a real reason to continue. Everyone that has a voice in DC, right? We all do, but some of us get paid to go there. We should be talking with people about prioritizing local foods in our school districts. I hear that like bringing like the value I think that everybody in this room feels from sitting here together today and exchanging ideas is incredible. We need more opportunities like this. Thank you so much, Pat, for bringing us all together.
And thank you, Miranda. She makes
Just-
She's our vista, by the way.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to mention too, the new administration might keep trying to push to help your more local food